Hello everybody and welcome. This is Jungle Bunk and this is my first video on this account. Today I thought that I would do for you a tier list, and I know what you're thinking. Why do I care about what some new MCOC YouTuber thinks about every single character in the game? Well, for me, this is basically my personal opinion about everyone. I don't want you to take this as objective truth. I want you to take this as an insight into me, Jungle Bunk. For a bit of information, I'm an endgame Valiant player. I've done all the endgame content. I don't push Battlegrounds. I don't do particularly high tier war. That's just because I can't be bothered. And I think that there's just too much energy investment for not enough returns. So this is my tier list. Bearing in mind, maybe I don't have all of these champions. Maybe I haven't used all of these champions. This is just what I think. This is what I have seen, observed. This is, at the end of the day, my subjective viewpoint. And without further ado, we are going to get into it. Immortal Iron Fist, I think that's just an F tier. There's not really much holding it together for him. Iron Fist, also here. Maybe either of them have good synergies. I don't know. I'm not going to count this in terms of synergies. Synergies for me are obsolete. I know that some of you may disagree with that, but I would prefer to be able to take 5 champions that I like into a quest over 4 champions I like and then 1 synergy member, especially if they're not a good champion. Okay, Jane Foster, she was buffed recently. I have seen a bit of her gameplay. I know she can hit hard, but I'm not sure she can do much else. For me, she gets put hesitantly in B tier, but that may change in the future. Juggernaut. Now, I've seen Juggernaut gameplay too. I can tell that he is a very potent mystic attacker. I personally don't like him as much as some people do, and I think that's fine. I have my preferences. It may be a bit polarizing. I'm going to put him in A for now. That may change in the future when I reevaluate who I've also put in A. I know what he can do. I'm very aware. I'm just taking into account all of this champion's strengths and weaknesses. And oh boy, does he have a lot of weaknesses. Every single non-damaging debuff in the game. Now for me, if I want to take a champion into general content, there's probably going to be a non-damaging debuff somewhere. Especially, there are a bunch of new champions that just sort of inflict debuffs on you. There are a bunch of old champions that inflict debuffs on you. I don't like having an entire champion's abilities shut off because of that. So that's where he is for now. Ghost Rider, he's getting buffed soon, but we know nothing about that right now. I used him quite a bit back in the day, but I can't really justify putting him very high. So he's going to be in E. Loki's going to be the same. The only thing going for him is his buff steal off the special one, and even then, what's that really going to do? You steal 1 buff. Magic, D tier. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is going to be... I mean, you guys are in a riot, right? But look, she's locked as a 5-star, so for me, she doesn't offer anything. I know she's got incredible power control, but think of all the people who are resistant to power steal and power drain and power lock these days. There's no point in using her, and in a couple of months, her buff overhaul is going to be released, and the magic we all know and love will cease to exist entirely. So yes, when she releases as a 7-star, she will probably move up, but that is because she will have a new kit entirely. Which is kind of sad if you think about it. Man-Thing, I'm putting in E tier. He has some good things about him. I know he can do some interesting poison, interesting nullify. I've used him a bit. I can't really say there's much to go on. If you have 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, which I do, then he can chain special 2s, and it is quite fun to watch. But look, there's just not enough else that he can do to justify using him when I would rather use someone else. Mephisto is in the same boat as all of these guys. He's not completely useless, but his strengths are just not big enough to excuse that. Morningstar is also in the same boat. Look, a lot of these champions were pretty decent back in the day. Morningstar especially had some pretty good ramp-up ability. But she's not a 7-star. Morningstar's not a 7-star. Mephisto's not a 7-star. Man-Thing's not a 7-star. None of these guys are 7 stars. Apart from Man-Thing. God damn it. Unfiltered, remember? Mordo. D tier. And I'm doing that because I've seen he can hit pretty hard. And I've seen he has high energy resistance. And he can nullify true type buffs. I think he has a place. I don't know if it's a very high place, but that's, yeah. I'm also putting Scarlet Witch here. She can do some crazy stuff still, but she does need the SIG 200. And I think, depending on what I feel like, she may go higher in this list, but I have not yet seen a lot of people with her at 7-star. Hood. Hood is good. I'm going to put Hood in B tier. I've seen what he can do. He's interesting. I personally don't have a ranked Hood, but I think there is a lot of merit to him. Symbiote Supreme, I think, is underrated. I will put him here. 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, 5 out of 5 Deep Wounds, both of which I run, and you're going to be looking at not the fastest champion, but a very, very potent buff controller and a very potent attacker. And in his defense phase, which hopefully he will have active pretty much 100% of the time, depending on who you're fighting, he takes 15% max health from any special 3. I think that's pretty good. Unstoppable Colossus is worthless, and I hate him. And for some reason, he's so expensive in the loyalty store for practically no reason. Dr. Voodoo has come in with some slight changes. I'm going to put him in B tier for now. I know he can be used as a kind of subpar Nico Minoru. No, Dark Phoenix counter if you don't have Nico Minoru. And I think there is something to be said about that he released around the time Dark Phoenix was gaining prominence, and that he is basically the free-to-play option if you don't have Nico. And I have some thoughts about that, but today is not where we're going to discuss those thoughts. Longshot is very cool. I think Longshot could honestly deserve A tier 2. I've seen what he can do. I've been saying that a lot. I think he's pretty cool. And he's got some good utility on him too. Mojo. I do think there is a place for Mojo in this world. On my account, he's at rank 2. And I think his main thing, because I'm not sure his damage is amazing, his main thing is making buffs expire really quick and the regen. Now, the regen is good, but he's squishy enough that the regen is what makes up for why he's squishy. So all he's got going for him, really, is the buff control. And he makes buffs last way less long than they normally would. And I'm pretty sure there are some people on this list that do that, but better. So he's here for now. I know there are a lot of diehard Mojo fans. I hope I don't insult you by putting him in B tier, let's say. Sorcerer Supreme is going to be our first C tier pick. I know she's got a lot of utility. I just think she doesn't hit as hard, and she doesn't, satisfy all of the checklists for Mystics these days. Tigra, I think it's not going to be a surprise to put Tigra in S tier. For a lot of reasons. She is a high skill champ, but if you can use her correctly, she is very, very potent. And I will say there are probably matchups that Nico cannot take that she can. Sassy has fallen off a bit, but he is going to be ascendable. So he will have probably the highest health pool in the whole game. That being said, Right now, I can only put him in C tier. I know he hits very hard, and in his Wrath of Tunrak thing, he can power drain if he gets you to a special 3. But apart from that and the cold snap resistance, I can't really see much else that he does. Dragon Man, I kind of dislike Dragon Man, so he's going to go in D tier. Sigil Witch, I know virtually nothing about, and I think I'm just going to put her in D tier. Mangog, another D tier champion. I've seen people use him to a decent degree, but I think he needs a SIG, and to be quite honest, he's ugly as sin, and I do not want to look at that. Purgatory. Purgatory came out recently as a 7-star. I say recently, that was Banquet of last year. Last year, because this is 2026. She did get a bit of a buff or tune-up or just general bug fix, and I think they made her a very decent champion. She was recently bugged so that her special 3 would do so much damage, an insane amount of damage. It was perverse. But I know she can do a lot. She was very good for raids, and they took her out of the raid pool. She's going to be a hesitant A tier for now, and I like her, which is why she is up there. America Chavez is also going to go to A tier. I had her as a 7-star relatively early on, and she was quite fun to use. She hits very hard, she has good power control, but only power gain, right? Not combat power rate. She cannot counter that. She has some healing, and she has some defensive prowess, but I wouldn't rely on either one if you wanted to look at her objectively as a character. I think offensively, especially with the combo into heavy, she is very potent. And I will say, if you're looking for a utility mystic, she probably isn't going to tick all of your boxes. As well as that, she doesn't have buff control. Now, she doesn't want buff control because of the way her abilities work. She does more damage when the enemy has more buffs, but that obviously can be quite limiting if those buffs are causing problems. So she is an A. Rintrah. I'm going to put Rintrah in A. I know he can do a lot of things. That being said, I have not ranked him up. I probably will not rank him up. There is something to be said about how I just kind of don't like him, so I'm going to give him the respect a lot of you will think he deserves. He will be an A, but at the bottom of A. And there isn't really a real order to this in the tiers themselves, but we'll just think of Rintrah at the bottom of A. Absman is an easy S tier. He was my first max 6-star, and he took me through so much content. There is not a lot this man can't do. He gets rid of the annoying buffs, the indestructibles, the unstoppables, the unblockables. When those are passive, he can't do anything about that, but, you know, he's not a particularly recent champ. He released maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even more. I can't quite put my finger on it. But what he is excellent at is damage and survivability and immunities. He has a lot of them, and I think he's pretty cool all in all. And I think it cannot be ignored how potent this man is for a lot of content. Spidey Supreme is in an interesting position. I know people have done well with him, but at the end of the day, I think he's just going to be in D. Diablo, I'm putting in C. I know people have done well with him. I, again, don't know much about him, so this is just sort of me putting him in a safe place. I know he does poison. Not a lot of people do poison. Hey, Man-Thing does poison. Diablo is probably better at that. I don't know. People use him as a Dark Phoenix counter. That is also fine. I have Nico, so I just do that. Dracula. Opinions on Dracula are very mixed. I personally like him. I see what they were trying to do with him. His damage is very low. I will put him in B. I do not know if they are going to buff him. I think the makings of a very good kit are there, but unfortunately the power control, the buff control, anything that you kind of want to see in a Mystic, it just isn't really there. I think the only thing he has is a very long slow debuff, or passive, some regen, which is decent, but otherwise the degen damage is just not enough to, you know, really lift this champion up anymore. Pavita is going to go straight to S tier. I do very much enjoy him. He has very good power control, and he has pretty decent damage. I find when I use him, he does take a little bit longer than average, just because his special attacks take a little bit of time. And oftentimes, he can depend on how aggressive the enemy AI is. So he's an S tier, and I don't think he's at the top of S tier, but he's not close to being demoted either. He's like a very solid middle ground. He does buff control, he does power control, he even has some regen, he's got decent damage as well. I think he's got everything you really want in a Mystic champion without being Nico Minoru. She's here, by the way. Doctor Strange came out relatively recently. Well, I say relatively, last month. I don't have him. I've not really seen much about him. I'm going to put him in A tier because I know he can be quite good. But I just have not seen the extent of what he can do yet. And I think it's decent. I think it's accurate to compare him to some of these people. Guillotine, again, no one has her as a 7-star, I think. Apparently they buffed her and then somehow made her worse. I don't know the full story. I don't think I was playing when they buffed her for the upteenth time. So she's just going to go for now in C tier. Maybe D tier. I just don't know enough about her. Same with Ebony Moore. I know he has some defensive prowess, but he still hits like a complete noodle. And I don't think that justifies putting him any higher. So Nico, it will not surprise any of you that Nico is going to go straight to S tier. And quite frankly, if there was a ranking within tiers, she would be right at the top, because she is the best Mystic in the game. It hurts me to say that, because there are some Mystics I like more than her, but that is quite frankly the truth. They have started to come down hard on buff immunity, which has the effect of making Nico less effective for newer Cosmics. The Heimdall buff in particular has made Nico... Well, Nico can't really deal with that. And I find that odd that they are releasing Cosmics that somehow reverse the class wheel just so easily. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think they're just doing it to sell whichever next Mystic they come out with. I don't know. Wiccan. Wiccan is a very reliable Mystic champion. I'm putting him in B. I think he is the baseline of what a Mystic champion should be. And yeah, that's all I can really say about him. Wong. I had Wong at rank 3 before a lot of people did. I used him in a path in Necropolis. I will say he works very well there. I'm going to put him in B tier. I think there's a lot to be said about how his ramp up probably takes longer than it should. it's not the easiest to lose. You know, it's easier than Enchantress's ramp up to keep going. But if you do time out, you can lose all of it. And I find that a bit frustrating. Additionally, he has a lot of damage, he has a lot of sustainability, not that much in the way of actual buff control. Now, when the enemy gains a buff, he goes unstoppable, but that doesn't actually deal with the buff. It just sort of makes you better. But he hits like a truck when he's ramped. That being said, I can't see him being higher. I think I've put him in a very generous position already. Spiral. Now, I like Spiral. Not that much. She is going to be one of the ascendable people in the super duper pool. I'm going to put her in A tier. She takes Serpent well. She is like, I think, the best Serpent counter. But outside of that, what else can she do? She has some very decent damage. With her Awakening, she basically nullifies 3 damage over time debuffs on her. So you can use her for Path 9 in War. But other than that, I find her just a little bit unintuitive. And maybe part of that is because I play on mobile and her Dancing Blades controls are very inconsistent. I often struggle to actually get it off, which is part of the reason I can't kind of talk about her well enough. I know a lot of people have her high, and I appreciate that. I like her. I wish I could like her more. She's very cool looking. Her whole thing with the combo, like, you know, alternating attacks is cool. I like it. But I wish I could like her more. But the controls, they just frustrate me so much. I can't deal with it. Kindred. Kindred, I'm going to put in B tier. Offensively, not amazing. Defensively, pretty good. Pretty good. I would say top 3 Mystic defenders. Nico's also in the top 3. I think you know who the other one is. Shathra. Now, I could put Shathra in S tier. I think she's good enough. I could also put her in A tier. I'm going to put her in S tier. I think at the end of the day, Shathra is, in terms of making buffs expire quicker, obviously, I mean, she's not the best at that, but the way she does it, the way she does the damage, the power control, and she just deals with all of the buffs. She does have a nullify if all else fails. Her rotation is very fun. I find her a very reliable Serpent counter, and I would probably use her over Spiral because I'm more likely to have Shathra ranked up. I mean, I have her rank 3, and she does these fights much faster as well. Werewolf by Night, he is cool. I think I'm going to put him in A tier. I think he's good enough for that. That being said, he doesn't have a lot of buff control. He doesn't have a lot of power control. So those are 2 things that Mystics might generally want that he doesn't have. He is basically a full attacker with a bit of defensive prowess involved. He does have some regen, which sustains him. The Ruptures, I believe, ignore ability accuracy entirely, so they can be placed on like Maestro when he has glancing up. But yeah, I can't talk about putting him any higher. I wouldn't put him lower, though. I think he's decent. I think he's a very decent Mystic champ. Kushala is going in S. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. There's a lot to be said about Kushala. She's like probably the most reliable Mystic Champ for anything you want a Mystic Champ to do. Decent damage, very decent buff control, and pretty easy to play as well. Deathless Guillotine. I got in on the Deathless Chase very late. I had to save up 30,000 units and 300,000 radians to get all of the pieces of Deathless that I missed. And so Deathless Guillotine for me, it was a lot of effort to get her, but it was mainly for Deathless Thanos. So for me it was worth it. But that being said, Deathless Guillotine, she does some okay damage, but that's with a full synergy team. I'm putting her in C, and that's where she'll be. White Tiger. White Tiger is one of, if not my favorite mystics. And I'm going to be realistic. I know she's not the best. Her buff control is limited to power gain and energize buffs. Her power control is pretty decent, but it is limited to her performing special attacks. She has some very unique mechanics. She can shrug damage over time debuffs when the enemy has buffs. She has health steal, regen steal on the bleed on her special too, and if you pair that with deep wounds, you can actually get a quite a good heal in. And she gains power that the enemy also gains. She's a very unique mystic. She's a very potent attacker. She can counter some champions you wouldn't expect. And I so desperately want to put her in S tier, but I cannot. So she will go at the top of A. Move over, Juggernaut. And that is where I will realistically put her. Because as a mystic champion, she is fast, she is lethal, but she cannot do all of the things that a mystic should do. That is fine. Enchantress will also go in A tier. Once she is ramped up, she is very strong, much like Wong, with the added bonus of being a much better defender. She's very complicated to fight on defense. A lot of people have issues with her. I personally have less issues than most. However, I had a war fight today, and there was an Enchantress, and it didn't go well. So sometimes maybe I'm a little too overconfident when I fight her, and that's fine. But yeah, not much to say about Enchantress. A lot of people have already discussed this. There's this thing about 5 out of 5 defenders. I'm not going to talk about that right now. It's not my place to talk about that right now. Destroyer, he's here. I think he's decent defender. Meh attacker. I can't say much about Destroyer. Dormammu, E tier, I don't know. He's got like a bit of power control, and I think that's it. Black Widow Clairvoyant. I have a lot to say about Black Widow Clairvoyant. She's going to go in A tier. She was the OG buff immunity champion. Before Nico came along, she was the only champ that had an offensive buff immunity debuff, which put her basically in a league of her own. When Nico came out, she was able to do everything that Claire could do, but better. Now, Claire has a lot of, very good utility. She's got amazing buff control with a buff immunity. She's got good power control. She has life steal. She has damage if you want that, but not a lot of damage. She has good power gain. She even has, when she is awakened, death immunity, which is, unlike with other champions, something that just can be inflicted every special 3, and it can last quite long. And there's this sort of positive repeating cycle where she does a special 3, she has death immunity, and since she's immune to death, she gains power, and she quickly goes to another special 3 because of it. I wish I had her as a 7-star. She's coming as a 7-star for Valentine's Day. I want her very bad. If I don't get her, I'll be very sad. She was my first maxed 5-star back in the day, and I have a lot of nostalgia for her. People slept on her even then, but it's been a long time. So I will take her to rank 4, but I don't think she will outperform some of my other rank 4s in the Mystic class. Dr. Doom. I think there's no discussion here. If Dr. Doom were a 7-star, he would be one of the contenders for best Mystic. I think Nico would still win for the buff control, but Dr. Doom has a lot of buff control on his own, and his power control is probably one of the best in the game. Isophene is our last Mystic, and I actually forgot about her when making this list. She was buried somewhere under here, and so I almost didn't see her. Very forgettable. With her dupe, she can counter Serpent. Not the worst, not the best. Just put her in C. So that is the end of the Mystic tier list. Obviously, a lot of you will disagree with certain aspects. You'll think I'm sleeping on some people. You'll think I've rated people too high. I'm fine with that. I will not take it personally, but I ask you not to take it personally in return. It is my opinion, and this is basically a reflection of who I am as a person who plays this game, and hopefully a Marvel Contest of Champions YouTuber and content creator in the future. So that is that. Goodbye everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.